Good morning. At the end of September 1777, Mozart, he was 21 years old and he had 280 or so Köchel numbers behind him, including all the violin concertos, half a dozen operas, Exsultate Jubilate and the Hafner Serenade. Mozart was waiting in a poky little anteroom in the residence in Munich, on the off chance that the Elector of Bavaria, Max Joseph, might just notice him on his way to Mass. Mozart desperately wanted a job in Munich. He did catch the elector's eye, he did plead his case most eloquently, but yes, my dear child, but there is no vacancy here. It was the same story in Augsburg, Mannheim, Paris, and Vienna. Dear child, notice, Mozart was no longer an infant prodigy, but he wasn't yet regarded as a mature and established musician. The child was still the enemy of the man. It was the most frustrating period of his life, perhaps, as it is of most prodigies. Later in the programme, Ruggiero Ricci, who was described as a genius at the age of 10, talks about the penalties of being a prodigy. Ruggiero Ricci, they say, was playing a miniature violin before he could walk. He was a celebrity at 10 years old. For his debut, he played Vieuxtemps and Saint-Saëns and concertos by Wieniawski and Mendelssohn. Albert Einstein called him a genius, so did many of the critics. Nowadays, he can look back on all that ironically. He can only half ruefully point out that his shoulders are deformed by 60 years of violin playing. It's a deforming profession, he'll tell you. Paganini owed his dexterity to a rare disease of the finger joints. And he'll recall that disillusion set in very early.
After I made a success in the beginning as a prodigy, I wanted to play piano because I was already tired of the violin literature. I knew most of it. But at the time I was 12 or 13. And I was already jealous of I wanted to play piano. But they didn't want me. Of course, I was already making a living as a violinist, and they didn't want me to switch over. So they bribed me with a good fiddle. They put Strads and Corneries. I had 5 or 6 good fiddles under my bed that they borrowed from me, because at that time you could borrow instruments.
And, of course, it wasn't only instruments he was spoiled by. He was, to say the least of it, well received, at an age when it's difficult to know how to take adulation.
I was too well received, because I was so well received that they said I was in a handful of great violinists, you see. So that if they say that when you're 11, then what are you doing when you're 14 or 15?
How do you recover from that? I mean, Chrysler was very enthusiastic about you as well, wasn't he?
Yes. Yeah, I played for him in Thibaut once. They came to the studio, and I played them a Mozart concerto. And I remember Chrysler picked me up in his arms, and Thibaut gave me a toy I didn't have. He gave me a submarine, a real one that went under the water. Gave me a picture, and I'm always sorry that I didn't ask Chrysler for a picture. A couple of years later, when I came to Europe in '32, the year I made my debut here in London, I went to Berlin, and I wanted to study with Chrysler. He was in Berlin. But when I got to Berlin, it was in September, and he was just leaving. He was going on tour. So he told me he couldn't help me. He couldn't teach me, but he said to go to Kuhlenkampf. That was funny. He didn't send me to Flesch, who was a famous teacher. I often wondered about that. Well, what was his reasoning? Kuhlenkampf couldn't speak any English, and it was very funny, because his only way of teaching me was to say, "You play so. You must play so." And so he used to make the 2 demonstrations, and then I would see the difference between what he did, imitating me, and what he did, imitating himself.
But after all that adulation and praise and so forth, at the age of 10, 12, I mean, how do you get over it?
It's very difficult. Those are difficult years. Then I started changing teachers in different schools. I mean, I went from Persinger, who was Belgian. Then I went to Kuhlenkampf, who was German. Menuhin had more or less the same story, because Menuhin went to Busch, from Persinger to Busch, and I went from Persinger to Kuhlenkampf. And from Kuhlenkampf, I went to a Russian, Piastro, who was a concertmaster with Toscanini in New York. Then I went from Piastro, and I went to another Russian, our pupil, Stasevich, who was a very good pianist and violinist, who once gave a concert in New York playing Tchaikovsky and Brahms concerto, something like this, in the same concert, one on the violin, one on the piano, which is quite a feat. Then I went back to Persinger, then I went into the army, and then I had to use my own brains and find myself. But I think a lot of learning is from doing a lot of listening. I mean, I think that I studied with Chrysler, and I studied with Isai, and I studied with Huberman, and I studied with Heifetz. Why? Because I heard them.
But you must have been aware at a very early age that there were lots of things you needed to know, although at the age of 10 you could play the Mendelssohn Concerto and have people eating out of your hand. Were you...
Yes, but you see, as a child, I mean, when I was 11 years old and I used to play a Mozart concerto, I used to think that I could write one. You know, you don't have any inhibitions. Whereas later you do develop them because people start to criticize you. They criticize everything. And they're very difficult years because you're nothing. You're not a prodigy and you're not a mature artist. So they start comparing you with yourself, which is much worse than if they compare you with others. Because you feel, you think, well, I used to be good. What happened to me? I remember one day reading reviews about myself. How terrific it was. I was a genius and I played. That was the greatest thing since Mozart, all kinds of stuff, And I was sort of shocked, and I was thinking, well, how could I have been so, how could I have been so good? I mean, what have I lost? Have I lost my talent? I think that's a thing that every musician has to go. I always tell pupils that. There's only one person that can make you a violinist, and that's you. You have to make up your mind. And when you make this decision, and you're willing to work hard enough for it and struggle for it, then you have a chance. But until that moment, nobody can do it for you. I learned more, I'd say I learned more about technique from Paganini than I did from any teacher.
In what way?
Well, by experimenting, by trying to see the possibilities of hand position, shifting, bow technique, and so on. I worked hard on them because I was interested in the fiddle, and I was interested because you always read that he had, like you say, secret of Stradivarius, and that Paganini had a secret. Well, that's a silly word because you can't have a secret in any profession. There's more to a profession than just whispering a few words into somebody's ears. There's much more to it than that. The only way you can learn or improve a technique is by trying to do the impossible, or always trying to bite off a little bit more than you can chew.
So you'd be saying, how could he do that? And
but
working
then
it out yourself physically.
See, because if you always practice what is easy, your technique won't go ahead. You have to push yourself. I think that all those people like Horowitz, Heifetz, all of virtuosos were extremists. See? I think your temperament demands that you, and your temperament which pushes you to do the impossible, because you have to make a demand on yourself, even if you think you can't do it. When I was a kid, I used to take a Heifetz record of the Perpetual Motion, which he played in something like 4 minutes and 5 seconds or something, and it's like a 4-minute mile, so I wanted to do it faster. So I used to take the metronome and I used to put it on like 184, then I'd do it again, 188 and 192, 196, 200, 204, till I did.
Till you did it?
Yeah, I did.
Do you still push yourself forward like that? Do you still want to achieve more? Is there more possible now, even after so many years playing the violin?
Well, I know, I put myself through because if you don't keep your technique up, it goes back, right? You have to make a demand on yourself. I put myself through an obstacle course every morning, like maybe one hour of obstacle course.
Tell us how that works.
Oh, I do all the most difficult things. Sometimes I play the 24 caprices through, or I play or parts of God Save the Queen of Paganini and some Wieniawski, the Austrian anthem. I played a perpetual motion of Paganini in fingered octaves, which is a very crazy thing to do. It's like walking on your hands. But then when you do something normal, it doesn't feel... See, I think that you should never be playing with the gas pedal on the floor.
You should have something in reserve.
Yeah.
Mm. And what motivates you to keep putting yourself through this obstacle course? Because surely a man of your talent and ability should be able to coast now, should be able to say, I can do this, I've achieved so many things.
No, if you coast, you'll go right backwards. You see? If you stop a day, if I stop 2 days, I know it. I can tell.
One of the other things that you've done an enormous amount of, as you are going to do in this concert, is performing for solo violin, which must surely be one of the most exposed kinds of performance.
Yes, it is. It's much more difficult than playing with piano, because you have the spotlight's on you every second. You have no... you can't let the other guys do some of the work.
Do you find that an exciting thing, though, or do you find it makes you somewhat more nervous, perhaps, about the performance, if you're on your own?
Well, I think if I wouldn't do that type of recital for a long time, then I would find it extremely difficult. But I've done it a lot, so I'm used to that.
Stage after one of these solo performances, you must be very drained, aren't you? You must be physically demanding as well as mentally demanding.
Well, it was much harder for me, and I was much stronger. I mean, when I was 20 years, 25 years old, I had much better muscles. And I was physically much stronger. But it's much easier for me today. I don't perspire as much. I don't think I think maybe at that time I might have lost a couple of pounds in perspiration, but not today.
Is that
I'm used to it.
Matter of experience and attitude?
Yeah.
Do you have
I'm not better, but I'm smarter.
What challenges are there in the future for you? Because you seem to me to have achieved so much and to have scaled most of the heights. Are there any challenges that you now look forward to? Are there any things that you wish you could
trying
achieve?
to turn out some good pupils. I would like.
I'm sure you do.
I get much more nervous to watch a pupil than if I was up there myself. It's much worse.
Well, it's been a great pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much for coming to see us. Thank you.